But I'm super excited to be a part of another SCORE presentation. I'm even more excited to have Indy, Ann Arbor, Dayton joining us as well. I used to live in Dayton. My wife grew up in Washington Township, and we lived in Kettering for a few years. And now we live in Columbus, but I've got nothing for love for Ann Arbor. I think it's a great town. I might be one of the few people in Columbus who have great things to say. Love Northern Michigan, headed up to Boyne Mountain to ski this over Christmas. So glad to have everyone. Paid advertising is one of my favorite topics. I love working with small business owners, helping them be found, making sure that depending on where in the customer journey someone may be, that they have a chance to be discovered, to be chosen. And paid advertising and creating an advertising budget around that really allows you to be much more tactical, really allows you to speed up and expedite the process of people finding you and ultimately choosing you. So thanks again for taking some time. At the end, you'll also have my contact information, but my email address, my phone number. If there's anything from an offline standpoint you want to discuss, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But let's dive into it. So paid advertising, at its core, you're putting money in some advertising platform's hand to be shown, to get the visibility, which is much more awareness, to be in front of someone at the hopefully the right time, to get the click, and then ultimately get the lead, have them call you, have them come into the store, have them buy a product, whatever it may be. So why paid advertising? I think when you start to think about how can I be found, there's traditional ways like building a website. There's obviously newer ways, very low-hanging fruit, like using your social media and just creating organic content posts, whether it be an Instagram post or a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post, and just kind of hoping that that message gets seen and distributed and engaged with. Or you expedite the process and you put money in someone's hand and you have the ability to control how you're being seen, how you're getting in front of people. So that's why paid advertising. The time involved in order to get in front of the right audience is a heck of a lot shorter when you can pay to play. So the other reason is people make decisions, and you'll see here, sometimes people don't even realize the difference between a paid ad versus an organic result. I think a lot of times when I sit down with business owners and they look at a result page on Google, they're like, oh yeah, those ads at the top, I never click on that. But when Google makes hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and the majority of the revenue is coming from an ad platform, people are clicking on those ads. Those ads are working. So they're monetizing their page in ways that is changing all the time. And you're able to get that, that real estate on their page because of that. And people will click on it and you'll get the results you want. 41% of clicks go to the top 3 paid ads. So those pay-per-click ads, even if you're not clicking on them, someone else is. And I will tell you, just simply with the amount of clients that I personally work with, like they work. So long as it's being done right. And we can talk more about what right looks like. So why use paid ads? I think the biggest thing is like you want to get your name out there, and that can be done in a few different ways. One, you could get your name out there when someone is searching for your service. So if you're a plumber, for example, and they're looking for drain cleaning, you want to get your name out there at that moment of truth when they're looking for a drain cleaner. If you're a new product, or if you're an author with a new book, if you're a new restaurant that's opening up, people may not necessarily know about you yet. So they may not be searching for, this product, this service, whatever it may be. but you can get your name out there to start creating awareness. So if you think much more about that, like a sales funnel, the top of the funnel is much more where the awareness happens, whereas the bottom part of the funnel is much more where the decision happens. Paid advertising can get you in either part of that funnel, the awareness at the very top, or that decision at the bottom. So you can also use it to increase your foot traffic into your stores. Like I said, sell a specific product, just create more engagement and awareness. So these are all ways that paid advertising can be used. I'm working with they're opening up near Ohio State's campus. It's a new bar restaurant, and we're creating a lot of awareness through the Google Display Network. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but people 3 miles or so around this new location are just simply seeing them time and time again. We want that name to be in people's heads. If a friend tells them about it, it has that much more ability to resonate with them because they've been seeing it, and it's like, yeah, maybe we should check it out. So that is a paid advertising strategy for a brand new restaurant bar that's opening up, as an example. So for this page, when I talk about best practices and using a landing page, this tells me a lot to kind of gear it more towards like a search campaign. You know, I use the example of a plumber or anyone who's in contracting, whether you're looking for a bathroom remodeler, a contractor, a roofer. You know, if you're an attorney and you have legal services, whether it's family law or, you know, someone typing in like a personal injury attorney, you want the experience of someone clicking on a result to be as good as possible to convert that click. In many cases, for example, if you are that attorney who's buying advertising space on Google search, you might be paying $50 a click. You may be paying $100+ per click. So you want to treat each click with the most ability to convert that if you're spending that much money on a click. So landing pages is a very important part in converting that traffic. And the next slide I'll show you, you'll get an understanding why, but you want the message of what the ad was to be specific to where the traffic went to after someone clicks on that ad, so that they are, you know, without doubt, 100% sure that this is the attorney who I want to work with, or this is the person who I want to repair my roof, because all of the messaging, all of the subject matter expert around that is specific to what that ad was. So you'll see here, like someone does a search for wireless headphones, they see an ad and they click on it. On the left-hand side, it's the company's website. And you'll see, you know, there's laptops, there's computers, there's tablets, there's watches, there's televisions. So there's a heck of a lot of electronic pieces of equipment, but I'm searching for wireless headphones. So my ability to convert that traffic is a lot harder when I take traffic to a generic company website versus taking the time to create a landing page that's specific to that campaign to convert them to buy that wireless headphone. So that is why websites versus landing pages are huge. One of the ways that Google determines how much someone pays for a particular click is based upon what they call a quality score. One of the factors, and there's a lot of factors that go into the quality score, but one of them is, where are you taking that traffic? And they will give an advertiser who's taking the traffic to a page that is relevant to what the ad is a higher quality score than an advertiser who takes traffic to a website or something else that isn't as relevant. That brings down your overall costs in that campaign, meaning you can acquire more customers at a lower cost when you start to do more of the best practices that Google wants to see, as an example. So One of my favorite examples, I came across a paid advertisement on Google, and when I clicked through, it took me to the business owner's Google My Business listing. And I was like so confused, but I knew that it was some small business owner who had set it up by themselves. And I reached out, and we are obviously working together as a client agency relationship now. But the way in which that campaign is ran, the types of conversions that same type of ad has is simply night and day because of the best practices that go into play. I'll take a moment to pause. Guys, so far I see no questions in the Q&A. So I'm not going to say I'm offended, but I would love to kind of answer some of the top of mind things that you might be thinking about, things that even might be specific to maybe not in the weeds for the business, but if there's something more specific to like the industry that you're in or things like that. Where do I run paid ads? So 6 different strategies and how to utilize each one. When I talked about the sales funnel and the top of the funnel being much more about awareness, display ads lends itself to that. So I gave the example of my client who's opening up this weekend. When I mentioned that we're running ads across the Google Display Network, those are display ads that you see on, weather.com, ESPN.com, here locally, like if you go on Columbus Dispatch, like any website these days has, thank you, Elena and Sherry, by the way, for dropping in questions. Any website these days have advertisements because these are how the websites themselves monetize their own traffic. So most of these websites are tied into the Google Display Network. Again, Google being the largest ad network, they power the majority of websites and apps that are out there. So what we do as advertisers is we plug in to their network and we show ads. And we can be very strategic. We could show ads to a specific zip code. We could show ads, 1 mile around the convention center to make sure everyone at a particular convention sees, a message. Kristen, I see your question. Thank you for dropping it in. I will say, if you guys have questions, just drop them in the Q&A side of things versus the chat, but I'm for sure going to hit up your question. No, you're good. Use audience visiting a site to the, so anyone visiting a site is who your audience is. Again, think about it much more as a billboard, and you're driving by the billboard every day. You may or may not need that service, but this is a branding play. It's an awareness play. You just have the ability to be a lot more strategic with who still sees this billboard. But that's the power of the Google Display Network and having display ads. So it's used much more, like I said, top of funnel, brand awareness, validation, exposure, and getting the name out there. So let's start here. Sherry, I don't have a question, but a comment. A light bulb went off already. Thanks for the explanations. Sherry, you made my day. Elena, what would be specific to financial service industry, business lending? So I think even beyond financial service industry, we can talk about business to business versus business to consumer. And I'll even take this right here with regards to display ads. If you had something that was specific to business, like if you do medical billing for doctor's offices here in Central Ohio, you're going to get your name out in front of a lot of people through the Google Display Network, but are those the right people to get out in front of? Versus looking at an ad platform through a network like LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, just like every other social platform, loves to take money or make money, I should say. And as a advertiser, you have the ability to plug into their network and start to target who you want to be found in front of. And, it could be, we want to go after all CFOs and start to let them know about, our lending products. I was working with or talking to an insurance company here in town that has like bond and other types of big insurance products. And so it's much more about making people aware that they are kind of that leader. So that would be top of mind when it comes to awareness for B2B, is think about the B2B platform. LinkedIn is an expensive platform, I'll tell you that, but depending on the product that you work with, it may help to justify the expense. The other aspect to it is business lending or other B2B services. One of my favorite sayings when it comes to digital marketing is the riches are in the niches. And how I mean by that, with B2B, there are very few people who actually have a very strong marketing effort. And so sometimes you're able to set up search campaigns on Google for people looking for business lending. Business lending, if I had to guess, is probably pretty saturated. And to be able to capture that traffic of people searching at the time that they're searching. I have a friend, he and his brother started a food safety consulting business, and they put out ads for a particular food safety consulting plan that they knew a lot of manufacturers would search for. And they were one of the few advertisers in the country to do this. And they were almost overnight got phone calls because of that. So it just depends on perhaps the B2B world that you're in. But those would be the two places that I would think of first and foremost would be awareness on the LinkedIn side and search on the Google side. Kristen said, can we go through Google directly or have to use a marketing company? And it was piggybacked off of, I was told you would need a minimum of $2,000 a month to make a difference in Google Ads. So let me address both of those. Kristen, you can go directly onto Google and start a campaign yourself today. One of the obviously advantages of working through an ad agency is the experience and the knowledge that they bring to that. So I've sat down with a lot of people and they're like, oh, I tried Google Ads and they didn't work. And I'm like, well, let's dive into this, because of course they work, but if they're not being done correctly, if the budget isn't there. So Kristen, to your point of $2,000, is $2,000 needed for every type of industry? No. But if you're a roofer, if you're a personal injury attorney, and you start to spend less than $2,000, you should know that you're not going to have ads live all the time throughout the entire month. Your ads will probably last 10 to 14 days. And if that's okay, then $2,000 is great. But if you want to compete with other people, or if you want to dominate the market, then $2,000 isn't it. I believe that it is better to spend or not to spend any money than to spend too little. So if you were, again, going back to this personal injury attorney because of how competitive it is, and you spent $200, I would tell you to save your $200. I would almost tell you to save $500 or $750. I would think that most businesses in the type of markets that we have on our call today, I believe entry should be around $1,000. And that's for search ads. Google knows the value of what a job is because of how competitive it is and things like that. That's why attorneys are paying well over $100 a click and other people are spending $8 a click, is because of a lot of factors, but that's why it's better to not spend anything than to spend too little. The only other trick, and this is a little bit in the weeds and a little bit ninja, but if you have your pen handy, there's a website, SPY, F-U, so SpyFu.com. If you want to look at what your competitors are doing, so if you're seeing they're running paid ads, you can put in their domain name and it might have a good guess as to how much they're spending. Don't do this if you're in a space that has national advertisers. You'll see hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's important to know that, but that's a national campaign. That's not local spend. Okay, so like Yvonne said, what type of budget would you use for a crystal shop? So a crystal shop versus a law office is going to be completely different. Yes, thank you, Tom. SpyFucom. You know, I think a crystal shop could probably get away with $500, $750 a month. I also believe that the types of ads that a crystal shop runs is going to be different than that of a law firm. A lot more people are going to be searching for legal services, contractor services, things like that, versus a retail store making people aware of crystals and holiday gift ideas and things like that. So, you know, Facebook tends to be, or even Instagram tends to be, a less expensive platform because you're higher up in the funnel. You're not getting people at the time they're making decisions. It's awareness, and it's not as expensive as Google search. So hopefully that helps you out with a budget for a crystal shop. Yeah, we'll get a little bit into how we do this. Okay. What budget would you suggest for Jazz radio station? Good, cool. Let's continue on. A Jazz radio station, I mean, these are a little specific, so maybe we could take some of these questions offline, but to me, that's much more about awareness again. So I'm thinking, you know, several $100, $500, $750, and getting the name out there a lot. But let's move on, because I know there's some of the more tacticals, like, you know, how do we get started? So the types of ads, Google display, Google search, this is what I was saying. It's much more about lead generation, because you're meeting the demand of someone's search at the time that they're searching. These are the ones that are a heck of a lot more expensive than those of the brand awareness, the display network ads, the social ads. Social media, so obviously Facebook, Instagram, those are the ones we're seeing, you know, more and more often. But even like pre-roll ads on YouTube, you know, you have the ability to plug into YouTube's channel, get in front of the audience that's relevant for you based upon the videos that you want to be shown in. And those, again, are much more about top of funnel awareness. Product ads, this is going to be related obviously to e-commerce. There are, you know, you have to have an e-commerce store in order to be able to set these types of ads up. So there, and many times, is investment needed to get that up and running. But if you know, look into, I even think like Square, Wix, you know, they all have e-com platforms, and then that allows you to go into a platform like Facebook and set up the shop ads. The local services ads, these are opening up to in two ways. One, contractors. So these are lead generation ads. These are pay per lead. So if someone calls one of these roofers, for example, then that roofer pays for that phone call. But that, unlike a pay per click, I could click on an ad and I may never call that business because it wasn't relevant, it didn't look good, it didn't give me the conviction I needed to call them. But if I'm reaching out to one of these, then that, when that phone call happens, that company pays for that lead. And this has actually been one of the things that Google has done recently that has just become an absolute game changer. I'll also mention that they open these up. They're not called Google Guaranteed. For attorneys, for realtors, a lot of like those agency services, it's a Google screened. So you still have to be screened, you still have to be verified, but you're not going to be guaranteed you're going to be screened, because no one's, you know, Google can't guarantee any attorney will win a case, for example. And I think that perhaps the last type of ad that we all think about, because we see it every day, is when we visit those websites, when we look at those products and we don't make decisions, then we're going to have retargeting. So, if you think about all of those different types of ads, be it a search ad, be it a display network ad, be it a retargeting ad, these are all different points in which you can get yourself in front of a consumer during their decision process. And to me, depending on where you are in your business, really helps determine what types of ads are the right types of ads to run. Meaning, if you're just starting off, it will likely benefit you more to be found for people searching for your service and they don't know your name than to start putting billboards up all over the city, start creating all this brand awareness. But if they go and look you up online, you have very little presence. You have no reviews, you have no pictures. So I would rather focus on the search aspect first of meeting someone when they're trying to find your service. All the while, obviously, building up reviews, building up pictures, building up as much validation as you can, a good looking website so that people, when they discover you, they can easily choose you because of the validation that you give them. As you continue to grow and you have the ability to invest more into the business, at that point, now you can start to open up into different networks, different audiences. You can start to brand yourself in front of people who may or may not need you, and just start really making sure that everyone within your city knows your name. When I think about, again, and I work with a lot of roofing companies, and here locally, Feasel is a very big name. I know they're even in Detroit. They may even be in Indianapolis, or not Detroit, sorry, Dayton. They spend a ton of money everywhere, but at this point, a lot of their budget is going towards the branding side of things, both offline and online. But they want that name to be so well known, in this market, that a lot of their efforts are going much more towards the branding side. If you're a brand new roofer starting off, you just want jobs, you want leads, you want phone calls. So meet someone at the time that they're trying to find you. Home cleaning business, by the way, competitive because you do have a lot of franchisees and franchise. So if you start to have more national competition, it becomes more competitive. I would think $1,500, $2,000 a month would be an appropriate budget for that. So, kind of where do you get started? Different cross-platform strategies. So just like I talked about, it might be Google, Facebook, Instagram. It might be a mix of all three. Having the ability to track the results that you're getting. So going back to that person who said paid ads just don't work. Well, if you're not tracking what you're getting through paid advertising versus what you get through other channels, you really don't know if paid advertising is working or not. And then obviously just some other best practices. So cross-platform is what I was saying. You have the ability to create demand with social media. You can meet the demand when someone is searching on a search engine like Google or Bing. And then you can reach out to customers with retargeting ads. Which products work really well with retargeting ads? The bigger ticket item expense purchases work really well with retargeting ads. If you're replacing a furnace and you're doing a lot of research into different makes and models or even cars or whatever, like you want to stay in front of that person who's about to make a very big purchase, and the retargeting ads allow you to do it. There are some instances where retargeting ads are not allowed. So if you're within the medical space, if you're a doctor's office, you can't retarget people because of HIPAA, and staying in front of someone and saying like, let's cure this disease, and then all of a sudden relatives start seeing that. So there's certain things we have to stay away from when it comes to retargeting as well. So best practices: use consistent messaging. Having an offer helps, depending on the industry. Sometimes offers don't make sense. Using consistent messaging, and when I think that, especially with display ads, not changing it weekly or even monthly. Like if you're making changes to branding and messaging, I think running things for 2 or 3 months makes sense. Obviously, there's seasonality. There's things that you focus on during the holiday seasons that are different than that of, say, New Year's or even springtime. But like, you don't want to be changing your messaging all the time. You don't want to be changing who sees the messaging, especially when it's awareness related. You want to keep that message in front of people for a long enough period of time, 3-4 months, so they become familiar with your name, your brand, your product. Make conversions easy. That goes back to having a landing page, having strong call to action. So buy now, shop now, learn more, call, visit us. Like if you look at where you're taking the traffic, can you easily convert it? And when I say easily, think about mobile first, and also like how many swooshes down the screen do I need before you ask me to take some type of action? The answer to that should be 0. I mean, at the very top, it should be click to call or click here to fill out a form, or whatever that call to action is. Target the right audience. It's a lot easier on social media because of their ability for you to define who that audience is. When you are setting up a search campaign, the audience is really defined much more on who's searching for you. So what types of keywords and phrases do you want to use? There's it's called negative keywords. So if you're a painter, you may use a negative keyword for car painting, or anyone looking for car painting if you're an interior exterior house painter. So there's certain phrases you just want to get rid of to make sure that you're not showing up in front of an audience that doesn't make sense for you. When it comes to search ads, even though it's, you can't necessarily define it as well as you can with social media, because social media knows so much more about you. You still can define, what zip codes do I want to show up in? So if I'm a family attorney, I may want to just focus on the, 3 or 4 communities around me and not necessarily other parts of town. So you have the ability to define, like, if someone is doing a search from this area, make sure that they see my ad, but don't show me if people are doing a search from this other area. You have the ability to control like the time of day your ad shows up. So I was working with a garage door repair company that typically by noon, they couldn't handle any more service calls. So because of that, we ended their ad campaign around 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's literally no point in getting phone calls and paying for those phone calls if you can't get a service tech out there to repair the job, and they just call someone else. A/B test, that means we're creating different, we're creating different types of ads, whether it's different pictures, different offers, different messaging, and we're seeing which ones are converting better, which ones are getting more clicks, which ones have more conversions. And we're making modifications constantly based upon those, those results that come from A/B tests. And then going back to Kristen, like, yeah, you can totally do this on your own. So it's more of a matter of like, watching YouTube videos, learning, and setting it up and learning from the mistakes, or working with a company. Whichever way you decide to do it, I think expectations should be known, meaning the first month you set up a campaign is going to be the worst month out there. Google builds trust with advertisers, and the first month is the worst month because they do machine learning. They look at the campaign, they start to give information based upon what they're seeing. So month 2, you've gotten data back, they've gotten more trust with you, you're making modifications. So typically by that 3rd and 4th month is when the campaign is running the way it should be. So keep that in mind. Even if you're doing it yourself, I would still give it probably 4 to 6 months of time, because that campaign will improve each and every month, so long as you're making changes to it and you're not just letting, set it and forget it. Sherry did ask, how many reviews should we try to get at a minimum to be impactful? 10 Google reviews is my absolute minimum. I would also look at your competitors and aim to be more than what they have by probably 10 to 15%. In some industries, that's tough. I mean, if you're a new restaurant and you're competing against restaurants that have been in that community for years and they've got 1,500 reviews, then like don't try and beat them by 10 to 15%. But if you're, a lot of small businesses don't put a lot of focus on it. So if you start to get that foundation of reviews will help convert your paid ads also. Meaning if people come across you and they start to check you out, that validation helps the conversion of paid ads. Reviews also influence those local service ads. You have to have a certain number of reviews in order to qualify for those local service ads. So even though this isn't like a review reputation talk, that's a good question, because they do influence how paid ads work. How do you set up retargeting on Facebook? Facebook, you can get a pixel. So I would just recommend like Google Facebook pixel. And essentially what a pixel is it's a piece of code for your website that you can put in onto the site. And so Facebook now knows when, a device has gone to that site, and when that device is on Facebook's platform, they can now retarget that person. So with regards to setting it up on Facebook, I would say go ahead and just Google Facebook Pixel. Instagram platform, financial services. I think whether it's Instagram or even Facebook, when you think about financial services, you think about awareness. You think about the referral from a friend or relative, and you see that business often, it becomes a more trustworthy business because you're just more familiar with it. So no one is going to Instagram to look for a new financial advisor. Very much like no one is necessarily going to Instagram to look for a plumber. But if someone tells me about a particular business, the one thing Instagram and Facebook is used for is that validation aspect. Let's look up that financial firm and let's meet the team and let's see who their employee of the month was, what they did for tailgating at the last Buckeye game. It's starting to build like the branding and the culture. And I think that there's value in that for professional services because of how referral based you are. You have the ability to get that messaging out in front of a lot of people using paid ads, just to create that brand awareness. So utilize insights. These are the types of insights that you can get from paid advertising. So obviously, how many clicks did you get on an ad? How many phone calls did you get? CallRail is a call tracking service. So you can even set up CallRail on your website. It's what we use to record and track the phone calls for our clients. And it's awesome. Not only does it allow us as an agency or you as an individual who's running your own paid ad campaign to make adjustments to make it a better campaign because you're hearing things, like that example of that garage door company. We only brought that to them because we heard the phone calls time and time again, like, we can't get to you today. People are like, okay. So if you're not recording calls, you don't know what's happening. I had a body shop that didn't have an answer machine, and we literally heard people call and hang up. And we ended the campaign when they closed up shop because they were wasting budget on phone calls they weren't able to convert. So if you're running Google ads, this isn't necessarily true for social media ads or things like that, but if you're really running a Google campaign trying to get people's intent, be in front of them at that moment, go the extra mile and record the calls. The other thing is, if you have front office staff, if you have people who are answering the phone, we've even had, quote unquote, coaching opportunities to work with the staff to say, like, we should at least be saying our company name when you answer the phone, or, in this situation, let's handle it differently. CPC, cost per click. So I talked a lot about cost per click with search ads, because that's how Google prices it. It is basically an auction of how many people are going after it, how valuable those keywords are, what your quality score is. All these different things go into what Google determines that cost per click will be. And the better the campaign, the lower the cost per click. So I may only have to pay $20 for a keyword that a campaign that isn't being ran as well may have to pay $28 for that same click, as an example. Reach and engagement, those lend much more probably to what a lot of folks are familiar with, which is the social media side. This will be my moment to say, like, there's so much confusion around social media ads because, and there's a slide here that I think maybe Facebook or social is about 20% of advertising spend. So like, they make a ton of money, but their confusion is, I advertise on Facebook could mean one of two things. It means I've boosted a post, or I've set up an actual ad campaign on Google. And those are both forms of advertising, because you're putting an advertising budget behind it, but boosting a post has entirely different intent than an advertising campaign on Facebook. So what a boosted post allows you to do, or what the intent of that is for, is engagement. You want that post to get in front of people so that more people will share it, more people will comment, more people will like it. And hopefully through that engagement, that message will allow that to carry even further. Versus setting up an ad campaign. And when I say ad campaign, you have the ability as an advertiser with a campaign to get a lot more granular and specific as to who's going to see it and how it's going to be seen, and building the audience that you want with different types of intentions behind it. You're not necessarily looking for people to comment and like it with a campaign. You want people to buy now. You want people to sign up. You have a specific thing that you want them to do, and you utilize an advertising campaign to do that. And so all too often I will ask about Facebook, and people are like, oh yeah, I advertise on Facebook, and kind of what they go to is, I've boosted posts in the past. So Edgar asks, how do you differentiate between paid ad experts to find the one that is best for your business? That's a great question. I mean, there are obviously a lot of, if what I'm understanding is like, how do you choose an agency that's best for your business? Then I would say there's a lot of good people out there who run paid ads. And, whether it's through reviews that you read of these agencies, whether it's through word of mouth that you get through friends or colleagues or people in your own network. But almost more importantly than like who to run it is the expectations to have around running it. Meaning, if you give someone, it could be the best paid ads person, it could be the worst, I'll give you 30 days, show me what you got. then save your money. Like, I truly believe that it's much more about the expectation of what it takes to run a good campaign than just simply putting money in someone's hands and you having a good campaign. If you have an e-commerce product, I would say if you don't have the budget to allow that campaign to run for 6 months, then consider like how you want to really go to market. Because when it comes to creating a brand, creating awareness in front of an audience that doesn't know about you, that takes time. And if that budget isn't there, then it doesn't necessarily matter how good the agency was that you worked with. No one can be that good if you only give, if you're expecting the results to come off of the first month or two. So in some cases, I would say it's more about the expectations of how it's going to be ran and what the goals are versus like, how do you find that perfect paid ad expert? Because I truly believe, at least here in Central Ohio, I know Ann Arbor's filled with a bunch of smart people, as is Dayton, and I'm sure Indy also has some as well. Like, there are experts everywhere. The times that I've seen people be like, oh yeah, they left me, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. It was, you didn't give it the time that needed to be given in order to see the results that were really almost there. You just may have pulled the plug too soon. How can you guarantee that paying you to run my Facebook ad will increase my sales to justify the costs? I would say that there is no guarantee. When it comes to justify the cost, I look at return on investment. And depending on who you are, really determines on what that campaign should look like. So I mentioned a company that was running paid ads and sending traffic to their Google listing. And when I asked him how much he's spending on these Google ads, he told me $200. And yeah, he said, I'm spending a lot. I'm spending $200 a month on them. When we broke down what his business was, and he does concrete pumping. So those long trucks that you see that bring concrete into a job, the amount of revenue that each one of those trucks can generate in a few short hours in a day, and the number of trucks that this business has to pump concrete in different jobs around Ohio, I was like, $200, you're not spending enough. So, if you're a coffee shop and you're trying to generate foot traffic, like, it is going to be more difficult to get a return on an investment than like I've been using time and time again, whether it's an attorney, a contractor, obviously there's a ton of businesses that fall into it. But if that return on the investment is there, that's how we know. And again, it's not a guarantee. These are tried and true strategies that work for industries that you're in. And they will work because of the return on investments there. And again, that's different for everyone, right? Like, if you're selling trinkets for $1.50 on Etsy, like, you just don't have the ability to spend as much to be able to get that customer. So that may not have hit the head, but what I would say when it comes to digital marketing, if anyone starts to make guarantees, I would be hesitant around who that person is, because it's tough to guarantee anything. To keep yourself up to speed on some of the things that I've been talking about, if I am going to make a plug for Rev Local, it will be this right here, which is subscribe to our blog. We have a corporate marketing team that I think does an awesome job, because I tune into a lot of content between podcasts and blogs and things within my role that I live in. And our team, time and time again, stays up to speed with the different trends that are taking place, different changes. And so even if you subscribe and some of them aren't relevant, I assure you that some of those articles that come through will be relevant for your business. Yvonne said Instagram or Pinterest. To me, Instagram. I think you have and again, it's tough to say, but like, I'm on the audience is going to be a heck of a lot more vast on Instagram. Pinterest is a little bit more niche-y depending on, who you're going after. And so that's why I would say Instagram. Bringing it back. If you want to take down my email, if you want to take down my mobile, shoot me a text, give me a call. If you have specific questions, like I love talking about this. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. And so I would, be happy to geek out with just about anyone, with any questions that they may have. Cool. Let me keep an eye on the Q&A, see if there's anyone else who wants to throw a question in there.
Sherry tossed a question out about Outbrain.
I do not know about Outbrain. Outbrain is more cost effective than Google Ads. Ivan, you just say how does SpyFucom get their values? It says one crystal shop sends 2.6 million on ads. But they do sell 789 items. It seems true that they do sell. So what I could say to SpyFucom, since I gave that tool, essentially what that tool does is it goes out and looks to see who's advertising on Google search. So it's only Google search estimations. And based upon how often they see an advertiser and for what keywords they see that advertiser showing up for, they start to make best guess as to what their monthly budget is. Is there any time you suggest a client? Wait, is there any time you suggest a client not interested invest in paid advertising? Oh,
Amber said she meant to say not invest.
Yeah. There are some industries where it's tough. And I've had some people come to me where it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So two things that I'm thinking of is I had one gentleman who does merchant processing, and he came to me early on and we spent $500 a month. And what that allowed him for was essentially one or so clicks per day. And it was because of how competitive he was going up against national advertisers, big banks who are going after the same merchant processing types of. So if your space is filled up with a lot of national advertisers, it's a matter of running a different type of ad. There was another scenario where a gentleman he was a salesperson who sold new HVAC units, and the amount of leads that he got was just so few and far between, because when you think about the consumer journey, there's so many more people who would just simply search for an HVAC technician or furnace repair or something repair related. Rarely does a homeowner go out and start to search for new HVAC install. It's usually the heating and cooling company coming out and saying this thing can't be repaired, we need to look at a new replacement product. So there's not often where I wouldn't say like a paid advertising strategy wouldn't make sense. But I think it also depends on like what else you're doing, because there may be lower hanging fruit. There may be things missing in place that would say, before we spend money in paid ads, we should make sure that your Google listing has the correct address and not your old address. We should, work to bring the 2.5 star rating up to a 4 or 4.5 star rating, because if people are starting to see you through paid ads, as soon as they see you, are they really going to choose you because of your reputation, because of your presence, your kind of how you're showing up? So not often would I say like paid ads wouldn't make no sense, and I would advise, but if there are things in the way, then we may have to go after lower hanging fruit first. Outbrain is good for blog marketing. Sweet. So yeah, I was told it works with Google, but it does not charge for a keyword. I really don't know much about Outbrain. The one thing I would say is like Google tends to be, when it comes to cost per acquisition of new customer, tends to be one of the lowest platforms that's out there. Lower than Facebook and Instagram from a merely paid ad perspective. Now, obviously an organic post that was shared and brought you a customer didn't cost you $1, but dollar to dollar, when it comes around advertising budgets, Google search tends to be the lowest cost per acquisition. Yelp tends to be one of the more expensive cost per acquisition. So different platforms, work in different ways, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, how much does it cost to actually acquire someone? Trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. The business has been created.
Gina asked a question in the chat box.
Seasonal business in springtime. When should I start my page? It's a seasonal construction service business. So Gina, two things to your questions with regards to when to start a campaign. One, when it comes to construction services, now is actually the time to start putting a lot of the foundational things into play from an organic perspective, which is a different talk for a different day. But that's, that's much more marketing so related with regards to reviews and pictures and making sure that you just show up and look good. But when it comes time to start a paid advertising campaign, even as you think about like traditional efforts, one of the traditional efforts for construction and home services are the home and garden shows. And in many cases, those start in February and March. So I would say that February is probably a good time to start getting the campaigns in play, because come March, April, and May, like I said, that first month is your worst month. So you want that campaign to have grown in trust with the advertiser, to have been optimized by the person managing the campaign, to have created awareness so people are starting to see you and recognize you. But then come go time, you're there, your campaign's there, your foundational presence and brand and reputation is there. So that's why I'm working with a lot of home service contractor related folks right now to prepare for their 2022 spring season. So love that question.
Then Wally asked a question about how about a hypnotist?
One thing, the things that I know near nothing about, I just do a search for like hypnotist near me. And, I'll see like there's integrative hypnotherapy. That's a local person. Then there's sondermind.com, which doesn't seem to be so local, but it might be. So the first thing I see it say is there's not a lot of advertisers, but there are some local people. At least, one in the search that I just did. Now from there, again, this is me kind of being the nerd that I am. Like I would go to SpyFu and see how much that integrative-hypnotherapy.com person is spending. They don't have enough information and they say their estimated budget is 9 cents. So either that person hasn't been advertising that long, or SpyFu just doesn't have that much information on them. as an advertiser. That being said, I think a service that doesn't have a lot of competition, that seems to be more local, probably that $500 to $750 budget would make sense.
I left the earlier questions up from Kristen, Mike, and Janice. I just wanted to make sure that you answered those before I just.
Yeah, Kristen, setting up a campaign and getting into the AdWord Manager and all of that isn't, so we didn't go that far. Hopefully with some of the best practices and some of the more foundational things, you got an understanding of like what pillars need to be into play. So I hope I didn't disappoint too much, Kristen, with not getting into like too far into the weeds of how do we do this, because I know a lot of people on this call aren't necessarily the most tech savvy or excited to hop in and do that right after this. Okay, cool.
Then earlier, Mike and Janice asked the question about trying to make this work for the internet jazz. I'm not sure if you answered that.
I may not have. I would want to probably know a little bit more about it. Like, is this a national thing? Obviously, it's going to be international because it's internet jazz, but is there a particular audience? Is it just kind of creating awareness around the station, or are they trying to do like a fundraising campaign? So something like that. It could vary so much. I mean, it could be several hundred to several thousand, just depending on the type of reach that they would want to get. But going back to someone's question about like the ROI, I think in part it would have to determine like, what is that ROI? How much revenue generating can be done, and based upon that determines like how aggressive it justifies to be.
And the last two, Yvonne asked a while back, how does SpyFu get their values?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that. I said it's their best guess based upon how often they see advertisers and for which keywords they see those advertisers showing up for. They make best guess on how much that advertiser spends on a monthly basis. Sherry, with regards to coming up with keywords, when you create a Google Ads account, one of the tools in there is called Keyword Planner. So it's a Google tool, and you can put in a keyword and it will show you a lot of relevant phrases that you can consider and add into your campaign. The other thing that I'd recommend everyone use, I think it's a really cool tool, is Google Trends. Trends, trends. And that is, again, you can put in a phrase or a term and it will show you like how popular certain phrases, terms have become. So if you're really trying to figure out like what people are searching for within, the aesthetics and beauty world, like they'll show you what things have become really popular. And then you can start to go after those services, go after those searches for what has, become more trendy. Quick question regarding business services and how do we choose? So Gina, regarding the construction services, how do we choose between different marketing venues? For example, Facebook versus Google versus Instagram. Gina, when I think about this and I'm dealing with contractors, because of, in many cases, someone is searching for a service, meet them at that time when they're searching for that service. If you've got something that no one knows about, then let's start to use Facebook and Instagram to make sure that they're aware of it. So a good example of this, I've got in Dayton, an overhead door company. Everyone knows if my garage door, breaks, I'm searching in garage door repair near me or whatever that might be. They're running paid ads in Google to show up right then. But they also have this product that is like a screen door for your garage and kind of turns your garage into a, I don't know, a screened in room. That's a product that not that many people know about or think about. And so we can use Facebook and Instagram and run a campaign to create awareness for that product. So hopefully that example of like home services gives you an idea on which platform makes sense based upon what service or product you're trying to promote. And again, Gina, if you have anything else, just feel free to reach out.
The only one that I had left was from Sherry. She said, I was told it works with Google, but does not charge per keyword. I'm not.
That was in regards to Outbrain.
Okay.
So that's my homework for this afternoon. Learn something new.
Google Outbrain, huh?
Yeah.
I don't see anything in the chat right now. And I don't see anything in the Q&A. Oh. So first, thank you very much, Neil, for your time today and your excellent webinar on paid advertising tactics. So again, just a reminder, Neil's PowerPoint slide and a copy of today's recording will be emailed to you probably on Thursday of this week. Step number 2, there will be a questionnaire that will be sent out to you from SCORE Columbus. Please do take a minute to answer that questionnaire. It really helps us in the future to improve the webinars that we put on. And if there's nothing else, again, appreciate everybody's time today. And thank you for attending. And thanks for the excellent job, Neil. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and have a great rest of the Wednesday.
Yep, you too. Have a safe day. Enjoy the nice weather out there. Take care, Neil.
Bye-bye.